Hey guys, my name is Jake, and on this video with me is Kathleen and Amanda, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about functional communication. Our other group members, Leah and Erica, created the guideline and implementation plan for us, so they get credit. I'm going to throw those up on the screen real quick. This is the implementation plan that Erica wrote out for us. So thanks to her. I'm going to switch to the guideline. And here's the guideline that Leah wrote out. So all right. As I said, our topic for discussion is functional communication, and the reason that we did this, and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking for the group, is because it's crucial to give everybody a voice. Not everyone uses verbal language, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that they don't have a voice. And that's something I didn't really think about before I worked in the world of ABA. I started out my undergrad at IU as a telecommunications major. And then I got this really cool opportunity junior year to do an internship at an ABA center in Indianapolis. And my sister actually worked there, so I went in pretty confident because she told me the ins and outs as I thought. And it turns out she left out that whole communication thing. And after my training, they told me who I was going to be working with, so I went up and I said hi, and he said hi back, so I didn't think anything of it. I went the next day and I asked him what he wanted to do, and he couldn't tell me. He just kind of looked at me, and I asked my lead because I was really confused to kind of help me out. He's like, I asked him what he wanted to do, and he didn't tell me, and she laughed at me. And I couldn't figure out why she was laughing, and she said, he is telling you, he's using sign language. And I was shocked. I never thought that my client would be using sign language. So ever since then, I've been extremely interested in learning different ways to communicate, different functional communications. And in this talk, we're going to talk about two forms of communication, and that's American Sign Language and the Picture Exchange Communication System, or PECS. So let's get going.
All right, so now we're going to move on to the research background area, and let me pull up the slides for you. All right, so like Jake said, functional communication training is so important because it really makes the individual an active participant rather than a passive recipient. In 1985, Carr and Durand used functional communication training to teach 4 children with developmental disabilities to request appropriately for attention and for help as a replacement for their problem behavior. It also noted that problem behaviors must be replaced with socially significant behaviors. This is something that we're definitely going to touch on a little bit later. But there are 2 parts to their experiment. The first part sought to develop a method for identifying and assessing those situations in which problem behaviors occurred, which is what we refer to now as functional analysis. And after the functional analysis, the authors noted that one child, their problem behavior was functioning for attention. 2 of the participants' problem behavior was functioning for escape. And the last participant was a combination of attention and escape. So the next part of the experiment was use the assessment information to select the appropriate replacement behavior. The authors decided that for the child that behavior was functioning for attention, they were going to solicit praise by having the participant ask if they were doing good work. And for the escape function, they were going to solicit the individual to say, I don't understand. A really big part of functional communication training is that the phrases chosen must be functionally related to the controlling stimuli. Unrelated phrases were ineffective in reducing these problem behaviors. So in the end, the results were that disruptive behavior was reduced to low levels after a child was trained to emit a relative communicative response, but remained high after taught an irrelevant communicative response. So what this means is that the children who were behavior was functioning for escape, their problem behavior was lowered when the appropriate replacement behavior, or saying that they didn't understand, lowered that problem behavior. But if the same individuals were prompted to solicit praise, am I doing good work, wouldn't lower those problem behaviors. So moving on, determining communicative response forms. It's noted in the literature that there are a lot of different response forms that can be used. We decided to focus our presentation on sign language and PECS. And according to Falcomado, Wacker, Ringdahl, Vinquist, and Dutt, functional communication may be implemented using a number of topographies of responding, so vocal language, PECS, voice output activation systems, and manual sign language. Zomek and Reft noted that due to limited imitative repertoires, PECS may be a practical alternative for adults with severe developmental disabilities. So moving on to who and what it is appropriate for.
For functional communication training, it is appropriate for individuals with these limited communicative skills. So individuals that don't have those skills to communicate what their desire is or what they need. It also is beneficial for individuals who engage in problem behaviors that may interfere with their daily functioning and learning. So to give them those skills to state what they want instead of aggressing towards somebody or something for that desired item. Also, it's appropriate for a variety of problem behaviors maintained by social sources of reinforcement that could either be positive or negative. Rather than engaging in maladaptive behaviors, functional communication training will help the client learn the skills to communicate their desires in a socially acceptable manner. As Kathleen and Jake mentioned, there's a wide range of different ways to communicate with others. So this can include using gestures, such as pointing or reaching for a desired item, using words to demand for those desired items, using picture cards with reinforcers on them, such as a picture exchange system or PECS, and using voice output systems. The 4 functions of behavior include access, escape, attention, and sensory stimulation. Once you have a possible function of behavior, you can use an alternative communication that will serve the same function of the behavior. For example, let's say Johnny is engaging in maladaptive behaviors, including tantruming and physically aggressing towards his teacher to escape a difficult task at hand. We can use functional communication training to teach Johnny to demand for a break. Asking for a break will serve the function of escape in a socially acceptable manner. It is important to reinforce the use of functional communication while putting that problem behavior on extinction. This will aid in increasing the likelihood that Johnny will use functional communication in the future. Once he's mastered those skills, you can increase the duration between the request and the break, or shorten that break, or you can even limit the number of times that he can ask for a break. Another example of functional communication training is when a child is engaging in maladaptive behaviors to gain access to a desired toy. You can teach that child to demand appropriately, which again could be using vocals, sign language, or the card exchange system, or you can even use a voice output.
And Jake, we're gonna throw it back to you for the next step.
Right on. Amanda touched base on a lot of good points, and for implementation, I'm just going to take what she said and break it down a little bit more. The materials for both ASL and PECS, it's really cool because both are extremely cost effective and they're easy to move in different settings and locations. So generalization is easy to see. the first step in ASL is to really understand who needs the sign language, and Amanda did a good job explaining that. So I'm not going to go any further. Another thing that you need to take into account is if they have the motor function to do it. A lot of kids sometimes may struggle with the motor function, so some modified signs might have to be made for them. And then you have to think about what signs that they need to know first. So you don't want to throw in a bunch of signs all at one time. So maybe two to three signs to start with. So a lot of times those would be the reinforcers or to leave. So you'd work on pointing to go. And to start out, as the therapist or the teacher or the parent, you would simply say go and point. And you'd say that a couple of times, repeat yourself, and then you would allow them to leave and go. After a period of time, when you say go, you'll start to have them model with you. So you'll say go, and then might use an intrusive prompt, like a physical prompt, to have them point go, and then leave. And eventually, you'll work your way down until they're pointing on their own to go. For things like jump or swing, you'll do it in the presence of that reinforcer, so they get automatic reinforcement. And eventually, over time, they'll be able to do the signs by themselves. And the goal is to, by the end of that sign, that they won't have to see the object in order to do the sign. So if they want the trampoline, they'll be able to say jump. If they want the swing, they'll be able to say swing. Once they've mastered a couple signs, then you can throw in some different signs like drink and all that good stuff. For PECS, it's a lot of the same stuff. The only difference is material-wise. I forgot to mention, for ASL, the materials you really need are your hands. And then it's good to have a guidebook, or Google has a lot of good references that you can go to see a bunch of signs. For materials for PECS, you'll need a list of their reinforcers, a good environment to teach in, the reinforcing items themselves, and the pictures of the reinforcing items. To begin, you'll set everything up in a good, safe environment, good room that has all the reinforcers that they may like, they may want. And you make sure you have those reinforcers close by. In this case, we'll pretend it's like a cracker or a goldfish, and you'll hold that in your hand. When the student reaches for that, you know they want it, and then you redirect them from pointing and grabbing out of your hand to pointing to the picture that you'll have next to you. As soon as they point to that, you hand them that goldfish. Eventually, without that reinforcer being right in front of them, they'll be able to touch the picture, and you can hand it to them. And then hopefully, after a long process of redirecting and modeling for them, they'll be able to point to all the reinforcers they want. And you'll do this for all the reinforcing items. And the goal will be that they begin to touch the pictures without having to be in the room or without having the items to be in front of them. So there you go. Back to you guys.
All right. I am going to put one more slide up for you guys. And let's see. Thank you for your patience. All right, determining success, our last slide. So success is really determined with functional communication by the extent to which appropriate communicative responses increase, and as a result, the occurrences of problem behaviors decrease. It's really kind of as simple as that. I don't want to downgrade it, but really the whole point, like we've mentioned, is that you are giving the child that communication that they can use in replacement of those problem behaviors. So that's really going to be your main key to see how this intervention is being effective. Also, as we've mentioned before, the emphasis for functional communication training is really on functionality and not form. So what I mean by this is that the replacement behaviors are based upon the function of the problem behavior. And this was evident, like I mentioned, in the Durand and Carr experiment for the irrelevant response phase that they did, where they elicited the response for a different function. And this just showed that even though there was the form of communication being taught, it wasn't based upon the appropriate function of the behavior. It wasn't replacing that problem behavior. Also, another way to determine the success of functional communication training is by the ability to generalize these skills to various settings, peoples, and times. This is something that is very important in teaching everything. You really want to be able to generalize these skills to different places and to different people throughout your life. And if you can't do that, how mastered is the skill? So sometimes with functional communication training, you're really going to want to incorporate multiple trainers and training settings. And if you're not seeing that generalization, then you might need to introduce training sequentially in each setting. So then, according to Fisher et al., functional communication training without extinction will frequently fail in reducing problem behavior. This is something that Amanda and I think Jake both mentioned, that we really need to put that problem behavior on extinction so that that problem behavior isn't being reinforced along with the functional communication. We really want to eliminate that problem behavior while reinforcing the communication, functional communication. So really just a last note, functional communication training is one of the most common and effective interventions for behavioral problems. So we hope you enjoyed our presentation and learned a little bit. And thanks for listening.
Well, thanks, guys.